All right, Chris, how did it go?
I'm so excited. I think this is the best day I've ever had in Canada doing this for sure. This is the biggest protest against gender ideology Canada's ever had. Might be the biggest one in North America.
Might be.
There's a lot of people here. So we're starting a lot of conversations today, which is always my goal, because we need to be able to talk about the greatest child abuse scandal in modern medicine history. Our children are being taught that just because they're not fitting in, just because they don't conform to sexist, aggressive stereotypes, that they must be born in the wrong body. That is a terribly psychologically abusive thing to tell a child. But as if that wasn't bad enough, they're then getting their puberty blocked with a chemical castration drug, a prostate cancer drug, a drug for endometriosis in women, a drug that's never been approved for this purpose. We're blocking puberty in perfectly healthy children. We're then giving them the opposite sex's hormones. And we're doing surgeries on kids as well. Girls are getting double mastectomies as children. This is totally nuts. If someone wants to modify their body as an adult, that's a different conversation. We should still be screening for trauma, abuse, and other mental health comorbidities, but we should never be doing this.
I think that's a very reasonable position, that adults have more sovereignty over their own decision making, and that the children is what it's about. It's about the children.
My message is one of actual body positivity. It's that there's no right way to be a boy or a girl.
I agree. Who can disagree with that?
Right. Who can? No one. All these counter-protesters don't even disagree with it. But they have this blind spot. They don't realize they're pushing stereotypes to such a degree that they're telling children they need to alter their bodies to match the stereotypes associated with whichever sex. It's total madness.
And it's quite a dramatic remove, because as you say, often there's no going back, there's no undoing it.
That's right.
So once the decision's made, it's permanent, and you have to live with that.
Yeah, if a kid went on puberty blockers for 3 months or so and came off, not too much harm would be done. Puberty would resume. But in practice, we know from gender clinic statistics, 98% of the children, when you start them on puberty blockers, they're signing up for the next step as well, simultaneously. So they go on to the testosterone or the estrogen for boys. And this is causing irreversible damage. It's sterilizing kids. Girls have to get hysterectomies after 4 or 5 years on testosterone. Sometimes they're cutting out their ovaries as well, so now they can never produce estrogen again in their life. I don't think sending teenage girls into menopause is very loving.
And they're just so young. It's like they're not really. The argument, I guess, could be that a lot of them aren't thinking it through. They're being rushed by what's popular, by teachers, by medical professionals, to jump into this irreversible course of action, and they're not thinking it through properly. There's no risk management. There's no risk reward. It's just jumping in.
What does a 10-year-old know about life as an adult?
Nothing.
What do they know about sexual relationships? All of the boys who start on puberty blockers, what's called Tanner Stage 2, the president of the World Professional Association for Transgender Health admits that none of them as adults have had any sexual function. So they're destroying that in prepubescent boys. What boy can possibly consent to throwing away his future adult sexual function?
There's people out there who argue that this sort of youth transgender healthcare is life-saving and necessary. What do you have to say to those people?
It's a lie. There's no evidence to support that. That's the number one thing I always hear. Literally every conversation with one of these gender ideologues, they say kids will kill themselves if you don't let them transition. They have no evidence to support it because there is none. The only studies that have ever been done into suicides have been done on adults, and they show that suicides actually go up after transition, not down. The best study we have is out of Sweden, where no one was lost to follow-up, and it showed that 10 years after sex reassignment surgery, suicides peaked at 19.1 times higher than their peers, after adjusting for similar mental health comorbidities. So with kids, we have no evidence to support any of this. Sweden, Finland, Norway, and England have all conducted systematic reviews and found that it's not helping these kids psychologically. So what are we doing harming kids if it's not even helping them?
I have to agree with that. I mean, who can disagree with that? But why do you think then that there is such a push to put kids through this and not have a debate and just call everybody who stands against this, every word in the book, like fascist, bigot, when your message isn't one of bigotry, it's one of, there's more to this, and that you're doing stuff that's irreversible to these children, and there needs to be a sober second thought, and everyone's rushing in. Why do you think they're rushing in like this? What's the push?
The counter-protesters have no idea about any of this. They don't do any research. They bought the propaganda. That's all they've done. This is pure propaganda and lies. The one thing they can't handle is a conversation, because as soon as you have a conversation about this, the whole ideology falls to bits. So they always try to stop me talking to people. If they could right now, they'd be standing right between us. Yeah. This is the tactic they always do. They blow whistles in my ear, they play music, anything to drown out conversation. So why, if they're on the right side of history, are they so afraid of rational, evidence-based conversation? They've got nothing.
And so a follow-up to that, why do you think the medical organizations and the professional organizations, the teachers, the doctors, the therapists, are also jumping into this just full-on toes first, right into the water, no dipping the toes, taking a dive? Why do you think they're doing that?
They're not all doing that. Most doctors are against this. I went to the American Academy of Pediatrics convention last year. I talked to probably 200-300 doctors. 90% of them supported me. But it doesn't take many doctors to do this to thousands of kids. You get a gender clinic in all these children's hospitals with a staff of 5 or 10, and they're seeing hundreds of kids.
Do you think the professional organizations like the CMA, for example, share that perspective of those 90% of doctors?
So these organizations have all been ideologically captured at the top. They're all run by these ideologues.
And they control the licensing. So
that's right. So in the United States and in Canada, they're refusing to conduct a systematic review of the evidence. Why won't they? Why do they ignore the evidence in England, Sweden, Finland, Norway? Why do they ignore the Academy of Medicine in France? Why do they ignore all the studies that have been ever been done into gender dysphoria that show 80 to 90% of kids simply outgrew their gender dysphoria? What was the cure for gender dysphoria historically? It was something called puberty. Now we block the cure, and we give them the opposite sex hormones. We're turning children into lifelong pharmaceutical patients and calling this love.
Could that be the motive? The pharmaceutical aspect?
There's money motive, of course. There's all sorts of organizations pushing this. This comes down from the UN, from the World Economic Forum, from the World Health Organization, from UNESCO. It comes from the federal government, provincial government, municipal government. We have far left activists who run for politics and get themselves into positions of power, but they're not representing their constituents because the vast majority of people are not in favor of this.
Okay, perfect. And just one more question. Thank you so much for your time. This went a lot longer than I thought it would.
No problem.
What got you into this? What started you on this path?
I'm a dad, and I'm not going to send my girls into a world that doesn't know what a woman is, and I'm not going to send them into a world that's trying to change the sex of children. We're all responsible for this. We're all parents. We're all aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters, and we got to put a stop to this because it's child abuse.
Amazing. Sir, thank you so much for hosting this amazing protest and for being peaceful and for everything you're doing. You're doing the right thing.
Thank you so much.